the opportunity, I meant to say something and totally slipped my mind. My wife, God bless her, reminded me. She fills in my gaps for me, which is the empty space between my ears. Had the opportunity this week on work with Jim to visit with Sherilyn at the Methodist home. She took me around, got me into some rooms that were locked up, so if we could do inspections. And she said Chip is doing well. I was asked about Chip today, and so I wanted to get everybody abreast of that Chip's doing good. Interesting week. Thank you, Rick, for mentioning my foibles. So if you see me fiddling with my nose this morning, please don't think I'm picking it. But it's itching and bugging me a little bit. And it's only fair because I come up here and I bug you a little bit, so we'll just call it turnabout's fair play. Being Halloween, it'd be interesting to see, tonight I think trick or treat is in town, same time as church, so we probably won't be giving my treats out unless they go out later tonight. But be praying tonight for those kids that are out. And a lot of them, their parents go with them, but a lot of them don't. And so that there's safety. Some of the costumes that the kids wear and stuff are dark. And once it gets dark in some of the neighborhoods, it's dangerous, especially when people drive stupid. So be in prayer for that tonight. We had some fun taking some kids and scaring them last night. And they were still laughing about how scared some of them got. The guys were actually laughing about how scared they got, even after we had gone and had supper afterwards and come back to the church. So seems like it was a good fellowship time last night, and it gave me actually some fodder for some teaching material with the kids now as we go into the subsequent weeks. So in any case, it's a time when we see the culture around us celebrate spooky stuff. And so I take us back to, many years back when Alfred Hitchcock had a TV show. And always these skewed, weird, spooky stories that were told. There was a lady in one of the stories that was serving a life sentence in prison. And she felt like she'd been wrongly convicted, and she wanted to get out of jail. And it looked like she had no chance of parole ever, and she'd served several years. And over the course of time, she became friends with one of the prison trustees. And she devised a plot in her mind how to regain her freedom. And what she talked to this trustee about was this. He was the trustee that was in charge of burial of prisoners when they died in prison. They had a little graveyard outside the prison walls. And when a prisoner would die, or someone in the prison would die, he'd ring a bell so everybody knew that someone had passed. And then it was his duty to go down into the morgue and sign all the paperwork and the death certificate, and then go into the dark room where the body had been placed in a coffin and take it out and bury it in this graveyard. Well, the plot she devised was this. When the next person died in the prison and he rang the bell, she had figured out a way to get out of her cell. And she would sneak under cover of the shadows to this dark room, and he was not to nail the coffin shut until after she had made her way in, climbed into the coffin with the dead body. And when he was done doing his paperwork in the other room, he would come in, nail the coffin shut, take it out and bury it. And then under cover of darkness in the late hours or wee hours of the morning, he'd come back and get her out. And she had reasoned there's enough air in the coffin to last for several hours. And so, once he dug her out, she'd have her freedom. Nobody would figure out how she got out of jail. And she'd have her life back. Well, he was reluctant, but he'd become real good friends with her over the years, so he reluctantly said, okay, I'll do it. And the next time you hear the bell ring, we'll just put the plan in motion. And that's what happened. It took several more weeks, but finally, one night, she heard the bell ring. And she got out of her cell and almost got caught 2 or 3 times on the way down to the morgue. But she made her way into that dark room, found the coffin, lifted the lid, got herself in there next to the body that was in the coffin, and waited. And pretty soon, she heard the light click on, and footsteps come over, and nails going into the lid of the coffin. Made her a little antsy because, she's getting nailed into a coffin. But with every nail that went in, she knew she was one nail closer to her freedom. The coffin was lifted up, dropped on the back of a wagon, and she felt the bumpy ride all the way out to that graveyard, out through the gates and into the gates of the graveyard and across the graveyard. And she had to remain silent when they dropped that coffin down into the hole and hit bottom. Not a sound could she make so she wouldn't be discovered. And she was maintaining that. And then the dirt started to drop. She could hear the dirt falling on the top of the coffin. And she was getting antsy, but she knew with every shovel of dirt, she was one shovel closer to having her life back. Finally, there was no more noise. And she knew within just 2 or 3 hours, she would have her life. And then curiosity got the best of her, and she decided, you know what, I wonder who it is. Which prisoner died? So she thought, well, I'll strike a match. I should be able to see in here clearly enough to see who it is that passed away. And she reached down into her little bag of goodies, and she pulled out her match, and she struck it up. And it was the prison caretaker. She thought she would have her life back. She thought now she would live. But she was dead, folks. And in the scripture that has been shared this morning that we read in Revelation, Jesus talks to the church at Sardis, a church that thought that it was alive. It had a reputation for being alive. But he said, you're dead. Each one of the churches that he addresses, and to the church in general that he addresses through these churches, he always gives a promise. He always gives a promise that if we listen to him, we need to listen to him, the promise is received. And in this particular case, he says in verses 5 and 6, he who overcomes will like them be dressed in white. Now when he says like them, he's referring to the ones in Sardis, in that church, who have not allowed themselves to become soiled or stained. In other words, those that have stayed true to what their mission has been and not fallen into the trap of not following Christ's mission. He says, I will never blot out his name from the book of life, but will acknowledge his name before my Father and his angels. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So these words, this message that he gives to the church in Sardis is a message for the churches, for all churches, every denomination, every sect of Christianity. When he addresses the churches through his vision to the Apostle John, he exhorts the church to listen up when he speaks. And that means that what he has to say is important. And in this message to Sardis and to the church at large, Jesus makes mention that there are some in the church who've not soiled their clothes. They have not taken on a mission other than what God put them on in the first place. They have not gotten off the path. And they walk with him, it says, because they are worthy. In verse 4, they're worthy. How are they worthy? Because they've stayed true to what he called them to. The reason they've not soiled